Some of you guys thought I was dead. All right, I'm not dead. I've just been super busy over the last year. Last time I talked to you guys was like a year ago. We were putting the car away because I had another project on the go. It was a XS650 bobber project for Justin. You guys have seen Justin on the channel before. He was getting married. He had this project bike sitting in his shop for like 6 years. No progress was getting made on it, so he wanted to ride it to his wedding. I took the project over, put it in my shop, and got after it. I thought it was gonna take like 6 months. It didn't. It took over a year. But we did get it together. It turned out great. We had a couple issues with getting it running properly. We were able to get it running, basically just running off brake clean. Force feeding it straight through the carburetor, but we were never able to get it to run properly. So it ended up losing all compression. So we put the bike together. Justin's gonna take that project over and rip that engine apart and hopefully rebuild it here this winter or something. And hopefully we can see that bike run around on the road here next year. He's already been taking it out to shows and stuff and winning prizes with it. So I guess that was a good project. I guess we did a good job on it. But we're back. I'm back making videos with you guys. I have actually been getting some work done in the last month or two without you guys. So we got all this space in the shop right now because the car's still in storage. So I figured we'd recast the hood and the nose cone and everything. This is something that I've been wanting to do for a while. When we did the original hood and nose cone, it was kind of our first foray into fiberglass work. So it turned out okay for what it was, but we can do a better job. So big problems that we had is the nose cone. When I was casting that, I wasn't keeping good track of how much fiberglass mat I was putting on. And I ended up putting on way too much. So the nose cone ended up being like 1/4 of an inch thick. It's super heavy. We don't need it to be that thick. So it's just excess weight. We're gonna redo it. There was also some spots where, I don't know if it got too hot or the glass mat sagged or what, but there were some pretty significant holes in it that we were gonna have to go back and Bondo and whatnot. So we're gonna redo that. The hood actually turned out pretty good. The big problem with the hood, as you guys know from I think 2 episodes ago, there's no structure to it, so it's super floppy, and it's actually ended up kind of potato chipping its way out because there is no structure behind it. So we'd have to put a bunch of latches or something to get it to force down. We got started building this thing out of plywood, thinking that it was gonna be like our structure to add in the back. That's garbage. So we're not gonna use that. Brennan at How's That Street Legal has come up with a way better way to make fiberglass or carbon fiber supports for the inside of the panels. So we're gonna kind of steal his method and do that for the hood. But we need to recast a hood. I think we can do a better job of it. And then we'll put the structure in the backside as well when we do that. So I've already got started. I pulled the molds out of the basement, got them all cleaned up, gave them a good sanding, smoothed out some of the spots that we didn't bother with last time. Also, there was some tear out from when we demolded last time, so did a little bit of Bondo work on it. Got them all nice and smooth. Once again, repeated all the steps for fiberglassing, so went through and waxed all the mold pieces really good, especially that front nose cone piece, because it is a long draw and it doesn't have a lot of draft angle. It's pretty tough to get that piece out, so gave that an extra special attention, and then went through and put a good coat of, what's it called? And this stuff, this is Pardol. It's PVA, polyvinyl alcohol. Put a good coat of that on. Last time we were doing the PVA, we were brushing it on, which is something that you can do. I know a lot of guys do it. It was a huge pain in the butt and we ended up with a lot of runs. So I went out and just bought a spray gun and sprayed on a couple layers of PVA. On the hood side, we also laid in the previous nose cone and marked out all of the seams so that we don't have to redo that measuring step. So we marked out where the original cuts were, and then I went through and put a little piece of wire underneath a piece of painter's tape in there so that when we cast the new hood and nose cone, hopefully there'll be a little groove where that wire is, and we'll use that as a cutting template. So we got that all done. So the hood is ready to mold. We also, I'll move you guys. We also spent some time on the front fender mold. So we had gotten started on this last year, building the buck for the front fenders. Since then, I've spent a lot of time bondoing and sanding and getting it nice and smooth so that we can pull a mold off of this. And then I went around, built a dam, so it's gonna be a 2-part mold and all the flanges and whatnot. I've learned a lot from when we did the original fiberglass, and I've learned that flanges are your friend. So we put a bunch of flanges on that, and that's ready to cast as well. So today, or this episode, because it's gonna be more than one day, we're gonna do some fiberglass work. So I got the hood all ready to go. I'm gonna throw on a respirator because you guys get mad at me every time I'm not wearing a respirator. I'm gonna throw on a respirator and some gloves and whatnot, and we're gonna lay up the hood. So let's get after it.
All right, with all that boring stuff out of the way, we get to jump right into mixing up resin and laying in some fiberglass. So I started with laying in some chop strand into the nose cone, just kind of around the corners. This stuff's great because it conforms really well to the tight corners. Big downside is it absorbs a ton of resin, so if you're not really good at mopping up the excess, you end up with a really thick and heavy part, which is what happened on that first nose cone, I think. It's also not nearly as strong as the woven fiberglass because the fibers are kind of in a random orientation, but for what we're doing, it should be just fine. We'll come back later and add some of that woven material in the back to add some strength and just cross our fingers. Moving on to the main section of the hood, my thought there was we'd make kind of a sandwich of itchiness with the woven material on the top and the bottom, a couple layers each, and then some chop strand in the middle to make up a little thickness. So I cut a big section of cloth and started laying it up, but everything went sideways pretty quick. Luckily, my camera battery was dead already, so my failures and cursing and throwing tools was not captured on film, but let's hear my excuses firsthand.
All right, that was the second worst failure I've ever had while fiberglassing. Second only to when I dropped a decimal place when mixing my resin for the gel coat on the mold and ended up with a big gloopy mess of uncured fiberglass. But I had a major issue there yesterday with the hood. I am not used to working with fiberglass weave. I'm used to working with fiberglass chop strand mat. And I did a couple things wrong, and I'm sure you guys probably saw it on the video. I did 3 main things wrong. 1, I used really big pieces of fiberglass mat, thinking in my head I'll have less edges to deal with, so I'll use big pieces and it'll all be fine because it's a pretty simple shape. Problem with that is the fiberglass mat, or fiberglass weave is all one continuous piece of glass, like one continuous thread. So as I'm like pushing the mat into a corner, it's pulling it away on the other side of the sheet. So not a big deal if it's a small piece, but because I got this really big piece of weave in there, I kept pulling it away as I'm pushing it into an area and smoothing it out. It was pulling it away from another area. Then I'd end up with a big empty space in there. So that was an issue. I got a little rambunctious with some of the threads where, an edge piece would fray out, and I'd be like, oh, I'll just pull that piece out. And I'd pull on it, and it would tighten the whole weave up and pull it away from somewhere else, and then I'd have to smooth that back out. And that was super frustrating. And then there's an inside corner on the body lines that's pretty sharp, actually. And so I gotta try to push that fiberglass weave into that tight little corner and then try to get it to smooth out over the edge. And when I do that, it just wants to bridge that gap. And when you end up with a bridge, then you're gonna end up with a big air pocket. And then when we demold this thing, we're gonna have big air pockets that we're gonna have to fill in with Bondo or something. So I got super frustrated. The battery was long gone on the camera by the time I finally called her quits. But yeah, I threw in the towel and I just ripped all that fiberglass off of the mold, threw it in a big pile on the floor, locked the shop and called her a day. So I'm gonna try to fix it today, or try to start over, I guess. I got a plan. I have some of this. This is just, it's just matte, but it's just tape, so it's 4 inches wide. I'm gonna lay that up on the body line. I'm gonna lay that kind of up on the top edge of the body line to kind of try to make it a smoother transition so that when I go back in with the weave, it's not trying to make such an abrupt inside corner. And then there's a couple of spots because I got frustrated and just ripped it off and went inside. I didn't do a very good job of smoothing the resin out. So there's some spots that are really thin with resin and they've actually crinkled, like a kind of an orange peel thing. And then I got some spots where they pooled and I'm gonna end up with a big bump of resin. So the proper thing to do right now would be to rip all this out, start over. But I'm just gonna throw more materials at it and cross my fingers that we can just kind of brute force our way into something usable. Worst case scenario, we do still have the old hood and maybe we'll throw some structure into that and hope it's okay, but we're gonna see how this goes. We're gonna follow it out to the end. So, yeah. So today I'm gonna put in some of that matte in the body lines, and then I'm also gonna cut some smaller pieces of the fiberglass weave. That was another issue actually that I had, was that weave doesn't absorb a lot of resin. So really I should be laying it on like 4 or 5 layers at a time and then smoothing that all out. So I'm gonna cut some pieces and try to kind of hodgepodge my way through this and make something that'll work. In hindsight, probably what I should have done is just taken this mold to like a boat builder and had them just spray the inside of it with chop strand and get me something usable. But I live in southern Alberta and there's not a lot of boat builders down here. So we're gonna try it. It's a learning experience for me. Hopefully it's a learning experience for you guys. So let's get after it.
The second attempt at a layup went way better. It was actually kind of convenient that there was a layer of cured resin left over from the first attempt, because it made kind of a slightly tacky surface and helped hold that chop strand tape up while I got it positioned into the inside corner of the body line. And then I started building up the sandwich structure over top of that like I had originally planned, with a layer or two of weave first and then a chunk of chop strand mat. We're using 2-ounce chop strand here, which is pretty thick, but it should be good for what we're doing. Laying on the final weave layer, it made a really nice smooth surface, which was super convenient for rolling the excess resin out of the layers, especially that 2-ounce chop strand. When you use a roller like this on the chop strand, it tends to just kind of pull the fibers up and makes a mess. On the weave, it doesn't do that. I laid up the sides of the hood first, kind of just short of where the nose cone split is. This lined up really well with how far the body line goes and also how far a single strip of fiberglass cut off the 36-inch wide roll would cover. Once both the side sections were done, we moved on to the center portion. Where these sections meet up, there's not going to be a nice uniform sandwich structure because of the overlap, and it's going to get pretty thick in some spots. But let's be honest, it's not going to space. Weight really isn't an issue on something like this, so it's not going to be a big deal. Once the hood was done, I finished up that nose cone in a similar fashion. Once everything cured up good, we got to demolding. I kind of skipped over the most difficult part of actually pulling that nose cone plug out, mostly just because I forgot to film it. But take my word for it, it sucked. We ended up whittling some cedar wedges out and beating on it with a hammer for an hour to get it to pop free. But the rest of the hood demolded pretty quick. I did run into an issue where some of the bolts weren't tight on that center flange. So the resin dripped in between those sections and mechanically locked the part to the mold. I just had to fix that by pulling the mold apart. The PVA layer though was nice and uniform and super satisfying to pull off. It's like peeling the world's largest screen protector. Where we ended up using the painter's tape to mark the edges of the previous hood, there was a really nice clear line. I traced over with a marker and then whipped out the old angle grinder problem solver and gave everything a rough trim to get it to sit on the car.
And there we go. In the span of, what, like 16 minutes for you guys? Something like that, 15 minutes? We got a hood. Well, we always had a hood, we got a new hood. And this one is arguably marginally better than the first one. It came out way better, it's quite a bit lighter. The fibers are, like, I did a way better job of compressing the fibers this time. The nose cone is way lighter. There's still some problems, but we'll address that in the future. We still have to do all of the reinforcement on the inside. I actually got started laying out kind of where those reinforcing ribs are gonna go. And then I got looking at how the cowl came out, or like kind of like the back kind of foot and a half of the hood. And it didn't turn out great. I think my mold has actually kind of warped a little bit. So we might end up using the original cowl with the updated hood, or we might do something different on the back, but we sure are not gonna do fiberglass. I have rediscovered my hatred for fiberglass. It's a necessary evil on this car, but God, it sucks. Anyhow, that's that for this week, or this month, or this year. We're actually going to have to press pause again on this car because I have another project coming into the shop, which I will show you guys when it comes in. I'm not gonna leave you guys hanging for another year, but the next project is gonna be way quicker. It has to be way quicker because it's actually a customer car coming into the shop. I got somebody who likes my fabrication skills and wants to pay me to do some on his car, and it's actually a pretty cool little project, so we'll show you guys that in the next episode. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching, you guys. Hit the like and subscribe. Throw me a comment if you like what we're doing, or if you see all of the fatal errors in my way. And yeah, we'll see you guys next month, probably. I'm out of here.